Freedom of the press is one of the most basic rights we are provided by the Constitution. Our founding fathers knew that the news media was the biggest fear of dishonest politicians and government officials. And because of this, the media has always had the role of government watchdog, charged with the task of reporting bad behavior as well as scrutinizing policy. The New York Times editorial entitled "The Second Year" would have you believe that the President's State of the Union speech was overall good, and the simple truth, frankly spoken. However, this is not the case. The President's speech made use of distortions, backward policy, and inaccurately placed blame, exemplifying the very same partisan politics he vowed to dissolve, and the author of the article failed to question even the most blatant example of this. One of the main issues the President spoke about during his speech was the healthcare reform bill. Regarding this, the editorial makes a claim of value paired with a claim of fact. It's a subclaim, that it was good for the President to criticize Republicans for having blocked healthcare. The article states, quote, "It was a relief to see him challenge the Senate Republicans for their obstruction. Mr. Obama has underestimated the Republicans' determination to block anything he proposed, and if the Republicans want to continue to block bills that the country wants and needs, he should let them filibuster so the public can take notice." The claim of value that it was good for the President to criticize Republicans is supported by the statement that the country, quote, "wants and needs this bill." I found this statement to be unsubstantiated, and so I sought evidence on my own. And what I found was quite the opposite. If the country wants and needs the healthcare reform bill, it sure isn't being reflected in the polls. Rasmussen, for example, reports that 61% of voters say Congress should, quote, "scrap that plan and start all over again." It seems that what the country wants and needs is for Congress to take their time and craft a bill that citizens can understand. The claim of fact that Republicans blocked the health care legislation is supported by the statement that, quote, "no Republicans agreed to back health care reform." And though it may be true that none of the Senate Republicans backed the bill, the claim that Republicans blocked it is simply false. From December 9th up until the swearing in of Scott Brown on February 4th, the Democrats had 60 votes in the Senate, enough to pass health care reform on their own. However, it was Democratic Senator Ben Nelson of Nebraska who would not support the bill unless it specifically prohibited the use of federal funds for abortion services. It was a Democrat who ultimately blocked the bill. The President's own party had enough votes to pass the bill for almost 2 full months, and yet he blames Republicans for blocking it. Aside from healthcare legislation, other topics the State of the Union speech touched on were the issues of corporate tax increases and job creation. And although they may seem like separate entities, they're actually intricately related. A second subclaim that the editorial makes, a claim of value, is that the corporate tax increases were a good move for the administration. The editorial states that, quote, "Mr. Obama was right to call for additional taxes on big banks." The only evidence used to support this claim is merely the author's opinion that the big banks should have to pay back some of their, quote, "taxpayer-financed bailout money," based on sheer principle. Once again, I sought a deeper understanding of this position and found it to be based in ideology. I do agree that the banks should have to pay back some of the bailout money, but increasing taxes on some of America's largest employers undermines President Obama's goal of creating jobs and preventing the outsourcing of jobs to other countries. The editorial states that, quote, "the first priority must be creating more jobs." This is where the article contradicts itself, since punishing some of our biggest employers is extremely counterproductive to job creation. According to Stephen Ballmer in an interview with Bloomberg, he's the CEO of Microsoft, quote, "it makes U.S. jobs more expensive." Representatives from Microsoft, Pfizer, and Caterpillar, 3 companies that are facing the same tax increase, have said that the tax increase would, quote, "undermine their competitiveness with overseas rivals and could lead them to set up operations offshore instead of in the U.S. The simple fact is that burdening companies that employ millions of Americans with tax increases discourages them from creating more jobs, creating more positions, and hiring more people here in the U.S. The President is actually propagating unemployment and outsourcing by imposing these tax increases, and at the worst possible time. It seems that both the author and the President have placed ideology above basic principles of economics. To conclude, the main argument of the editorial is that the State of the Union speech was good, and, quote, "the truth, frankly spoken." However, I've provided you with well-substantiated arguments against the 3 subclaims used by the editorial to make its point in my speech here. And so if by good the author meant illogical policy decisions, and by truth meant inaccurately placed blame, then it holds true. It was once considered vital to democracy that the press monitor the conduct of the government and its officials. Yet this editorial is representative of a changing motive in today's media. Sadly, the watchdog has become the lapdog.